Conscious collaboration brings together entrepreneurs, changemakers, and thought leaders. We aim to highlight the people that embody the idea of aligned mind, body, and business. Each week, we share, discuss, and learn from the various experiences and ideas of our guest experts. Through our discovery, we find a path to an aligned mind, body, and business.
What up, y'all? This is Emily.
And I'm Lisa, and we are the Conscious Collaboration. And we're very excited to let you guys know today we have back with us today, Dr. Carlos Garcia, our dear friend, one of our most downloaded episodes, Emily.
Yeah.
Dr. Carlos, still bringing him in, resonates with so many. Dr. Carlos, if his episode really, it really touched so many. I think it's so great to bring in that feminine and masculine balance to talking through life's just experience. And since that episode, he has joined forces with one of our mutual friends, Supna Doshi, and together they created the podcast, The Human Experience. I'm hooked. I've attended one of the recording sessions in person, and it was such a warm, enlightening, very therapeutic discussion. So I'm going to toss it over to you. You can share a little bit more of your background, how you came to be connected, and how you created this really gem of a podcast. So
you'd like to start us off?
Yeah.
Thank you, Lisa. So Dr. Carlos and I was trying to think how long ago we met each other, but it's years now, I think. And so we've known each other for a while. We've done a lot of work together. And to be honest, I think this podcast just kind of manifested itself.
As they do.
I don't even remember. I think one time we were on a call and I said, or Carlos said, we should do a podcast. And we said, okay, let's do that. We've always had such really deep, meaningful conversations. I think for me, Carlos is one of, on my favorites on my phone to call when I need help or for anything. And so I think being able to share that space with others of two people having very honest, real conversations about life and emotion and this human experience, I think that's kind of what I've heard is resonating with our listeners. I'm grateful that we're able to stay in that space and stay in that vulnerability to keep sharing.
Yeah, I really saw that come through in the live recording session with the both of you. And I mean, to be honest, I knew very little other than the both of you when I showed up, so I didn't know what the discussion was going to be like. And the vulnerability that you share really connected very deeply with everybody in that room. And I really loved how I could just see the little bulbs of courageousness turn on, where they felt very safe to share with you, to ask questions. And I like that you inject that joy and your fun and your friendship into your conversations. We were saying in the pre-chat, it really is, everything is about relationship of all the different levels.
Yeah. So thank you both, Emily and Lisa, for having Supna and I on. It's such an honor to be on your podcast, which I'm such a huge fan of, the community that you're building and the wonderful topics that you discuss. So sort of to Supna's point, I think Supna has been such an absolute rock in my life. Like, she is the place where when I'm needing grounding, which is probably more often than I want it to be, she's the place that I go to receive that and to just sort of hear myself talk and sort of walk myself through some stuff sometimes, or to just receive like the most invaluable feedback from her in a very loving and compassionate way. And so I think over the years, we've just had these really beautiful discussions over lunch or breakfast or coffee or tea. yeah, and then we were just kind of like, maybe we should record these. Maybe this can be valuable to other folks out there who are navigating some of the same things that you and I do. And we sort of made a promise to each other, which I love, and I'm trying to sort of take into other aspects of my life, which was like, it needs to be easy. If this is feeling hard or we don't want to do it, let's totally do it from a place of surrender and letting go. And that's exactly what it's been, right? Like we rarely really prepare a topic. We just kind of show up and we share what's on our hearts, and it's felt like such a beautiful ride so far.
I love that you're both very much, I mean, I see you both as just strong, very authentic leaders in your own areas. But I love also that you allow there to be space and to share that even you of your standard, you need each other.
Yeah.
Right? I think that's a really great component in how important it is to find your people to be that rock, that grounding. Supna, you are very grounding. Your energy is, you're very like able to be centered and bring it down. So I really see that's very beautiful.
I get
in our pre-chat. Yeah,
I get a lot of practice.
Yeah.
With my kids.
Oh, yes. Oh, you know what? I wanted to highlight that, Emily, too. We do a lot of talking about parenting and what that means. And within our conscious collaboration collective, there's a lot of people balancing that parent life with being the thought leader and the change maker. And here you are. Since I've known you, I have held you in such high regard for your amazing ability to parent. Your unique experience of having the triplets and balancing everything there. It says so much.
It has certainly been, I think, my biggest life lesson.
Yes, one day we'll have the triplets on. Yeah.
Yes. They love these conversations. We went to, as a family, we went to one of Carlos's talks a couple of weeks ago, and I always know that it's fine to take them, but I was a little curious because really the room was filled with adults. But to hear them afterwards having conversations about childhood and spirituality, and oh, that's the way Grandpa acts the way that he does. That's why is really, it's been really eye-opening.
I was so impressed by that too, that you had the whole family and that circle, and that's what I hope for my children as well too, to be as involved and as aware. It's really quite amazing. And I think it really lends itself very well to what we discussed in our pre-chat when tuning into the collective and being in that current space of the energy of innocence.
Yeah, and what a great experience for them it must have been and it must be just to be included in that conversation, and kind of in the same way that we were talking about and getting into as us as adults, getting back to that childlike energy, giving them that space to understand that what they have to say and what they think and how they perceive things matters, just as much. And I feel like that would be a really positive thing to shape their worldview and their whole experience.
Just to have their energy in a room too is, I mean, youth and children, and they have that genuine, curiosity that we all seek to reconnect with, and seeing and hearing things for the first time. It's infectious in a good way. It's something really wonderful to take home. So we need each other in that space. I think it's we were talking, and Supna, you made a very good point. I was wondering in our pre-chat, we were talking about innocence, and And when do we lose that innocence? Or when do we lose that connection?
Yeah. And I think to your point about, my kids have been my biggest life lesson. It's that for me, it's not really a loss of innocence. It's more of a remembering. So really undoing all of the layers of what we've been taught and how we've grown up with other people's experiences, and really undoing all of those layers to find our own selves and who we really are, which really I feel like we are our strongest when we are children.
In a lot of ways, yeah. I can see that. You know what the thought I just had is maybe part of like forgetting that is we kind of stop asking why for a lot of things. We kind of like let go of the curiosity aspect, a kid will when they're learning about something or listening to something or having a conversation with it, sometimes it'll get like aggravating because they'll be like, well, why? Well, why? Well, why is this? But I think that could be really beneficial for us to take that type of curiosity back on to help. We were talking about limitations, right? Before in our pre-chat, we were talking about how a lot of kind of what we lose or forget has to do with that idea of limitless, being limitless, and so maybe even just having the kids in the room kind of promotes that energy of curiosity and starting to break down limits comes into play.
Carlos, I love what we were talking about. Is Jonah just turned 3.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, big 3.
Big 3. Definitely a year.
Yeah, he's very much in the why stage, which sometimes if I'm not rooted in my patience can become a little frustrating because I'm like, just because, right? But I think that one of the things that I often talk about, I think we've sort of been in some ways led to believe that only like the big scary sort of traumatic events in our lives are the ones that create an impact. And really what I'd like to share a lot about is the ways that maybe more subtly we develop models or belief systems. And so for me, I think where some of that forgetting happens is through fear and shame. Right? I think in the service of our parents trying to protect us, they want to keep us safe. And so if we're doing things that are too risky or even that feel risky for them or something that they might not have had the confidence to take on, they might hold us back by saying, you might fail at that. Be careful with that. Don't put yourself out there too much. It can, it might be painful. Just this week, we were having dinner, and my son, just on his own, turned to his mother and said, "Mommy, thank you for dinner. It's very yummy." And then he turns to me and he says, "Daddy, thank Mommy."
I love that.
And I was like, right, yes, thank you, right? How compassionate. And then I went into my own head and I started to cry. Because the thought that came through is like so many of the people that I've met over my life or have worked with that are just like deeply compassionate and so kind and loving. And that because we show up that way, we've been hurt by people, we get taken advantage of in, small and not so small ways. the sort of pain and letdown, the discouragement, the hurt that we might experience when we're really, really good people in the world. And I just had there was just this series of thoughts that I had about when this kid gets older, oh my God, his heart's going to break. And it was just too much for me to endure in that moment. And I can see how any parent would want to protect a child from that level of pain.
Mm-hmm.
And I shared that, my wife asked me, she's like, what's coming up for you? And I shared that, and she's like, yeah, he's going to go through it. And that's right. That's part of the ways that we experience resistance and obstacles and hardships in our life, that while we might try to get protected from, sometimes maybe we need, right, for our own growth. But yeah, just coming back to that point, I think sometimes fear and shame about that curiosity that we have, about stepping into the world courageously and boldly, we start to receive these small messages that get planted as these little seeds that may impact us later on.
Yeah, maybe we start to fear the answer as to why, we don't want to know.
Yeah, what came up for me is I was just reflecting on myself as a child, and I would sit in the back seat and say why or where over and over again, and my parents would joke around like, no more questions. I knew they were joking around a lot of the time, and that was their parenting way. But I think that it came to a point when I thought maybe it looked bad for me to have questions and to not know the answer and just to figure it out on my own. And I think, to the point of that, returning to innocence, I think in my entrepreneurship, in that risk taking, I was more open. I became more open to asking, what something could look like, and asking my trusted people, how do you see this? What would happen? So that's what came up for me. It was more self-imposed shame of not knowing the answer.
I love that. Yeah, I've had a lot of questions over the several years. But I think what I learned really early on to do was to get curious with them and say, oh, that's such a great question. Why do you think that is?
I like that.
And the reason that my kids asked the questions was never the reason I thought it was. And so it was just such a learning about, how their brains work and how they're putting all of these puzzle pieces together, that I really learned so much from that practice of just, even now at 12, if they'll ask me why, I'll just say, well, why do you think? What's going on in your brain? And it's just the most fascinating things.
Yeah, I like that.
Turn the tables on them.
Yeah. And I will say, kind of, Lisa, to your point earlier about fear, I think that fear has been the way for me. I think Carlos and I have talked about this several times, that fear had such a strong hold over me in so many different areas that I hadn't realized that was what was stopping me from doing so many things. And I'm a big fan of Michael Singer and the Surrender Experiment. And so through that book and through all of the teachings and learnings from Ram Dass and so many other teachers who are out there, Wayne Dyer, I started asking myself, am I afraid of that? Is that why I'm not doing it? And if that's why I'm not doing it, then that's exactly what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
I like that, kind of checking yourself first. Am I, forced moment of honesty here. Am I not doing this because I'm afraid, or is it something else? I like that.
Yeah, Emily, that reminds me of a recent conversation we had about entrepreneurship, where you had quoted someone talking about entrepreneurship is jumping out of a plane and creating the parachute on the way
building
down.
the parachute on the way down. Yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know. I spent a little bit of time. I was checking in with the Facebook group a little bit earlier, and so I got hopped on the social media, and that's also one place you have to spend a lot of time as an entrepreneur or change maker and thought leader in your communities. And we had a mutual connection that shared, the word entrepreneur is too fancy for what should just be. I think he said risk taker, right? Isn't it strange how, one thing you see in a community becomes a word that you hear repeated several times in a day? But yeah, risk taker.
Yeah, risk taker. One of the topics that I speak on a lot, because I do work with, you can call them high achievers, doers, right? Entrepreneurs, is this idea of imposter syndrome. And the ways that we can or have to maneuver through fear and self-doubt at various times in our lives. But if we think about it, we do that as parents, we do that as business owners, we do that, if we're afraid to maybe speak on a stage, right? Like we're always navigating some fear somewhere. And that's just like, right, like a reality of the human condition. And so what a beautiful way to show up in the world with the curiosity of like, where am I experiencing this fear? And what might be driving that? And, can I use that to refine whatever ability that, because I do think that there is this way in which when we face hardship, it gives us access to versions of ourselves that we've either forgotten or haven't met yet, that are deeply resilient, deeply courageous. And so my battle is always with, and Supna and I talk about this often, right? Like for me, and Ram Dass talks about this idea of like putting yourself in the hottest fires, right? Like I intentionally want to make life hard for myself, almost out of this place of like, I know that there's wisdom on the other side, or I know this will refine me in some way. And finding a balance around that. I don't know if it's something that shows up for you all, or that it feels challenging in any way. Because what happens for me is like, the fire's too hot. Get me out of here. Get me out of here. Why do I keep doing this? Why do I keep putting myself in the fire? Right. So, that's just a really interesting space that I find myself in often.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I love the concept of us each forging ourselves in fire, whether we think we're doing the right way or not. We're still refining in that moment, even if we're completely terrified. But it made me think of a sword and being forged in fire, and then being able to cut through more precisely in the future. And it doesn't have to look pretty.
And I don't know, I'm thinking of this idea of like differentiating between the valuable aspect of sort of choosing the hard way because of the growth and everything like that. And where's the line between that and just sort of almost creating your own drama because that's what you're accustomed to, or like that whole idea. You hear this, well, I hear this talked about, like in the context of relationships a lot, where, you know, if the waters are too calm, it's like something must be wrong, because you've just become so used to like drama.
Emily, that's interesting. Dr. Carlos, I can see you have something to add, insightful to add. I can't wait to hear it. But that, linking that like urge to light that match and create the drama in a relationship, maybe perhaps if that's a habit, that will also show up in other areas.
Yeah, I think it's a very subtle delineation to make. And I think probably shows up for any one of us in very different ways. And I think that's, for me, that's the beauty of the work in front of us, is that it comes in so many different ways and so many different flavors, and that it really requires a great deal of discernment and consciousness to look at the obstacle in front of you, right? Because the same obstacle maybe for you, Emily, is like, oh, this is rooting me in something unhealthy, where for me it's like, oh, this is the very thing I need, right? And vice versa. But when you shared that, the quote that sort of came up for me was that peace feels like boredom when you're used to chaos. Right? And so, yeah, Emily, that's one of the places where I'm constantly like, is this just me going back into my pattern of needing havoc and chaos so that I can feel purposeful or aligned or whatever? Or is this, some deeper version of me that is rooted in evolving, right?
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's just an extension of the question that Supna was talking about. Like, okay, why, why is this? Is this just because I'm afraid to do it? Is this more of a like, I'm bored, I'm complacent kind of thing? Where are we here on this spectrum? Why? And maybe that's where the innocence and the childlike energy can really help us out. I know I've found this, like, really over the last year. I've been intentionally taking every opportunity to just play, whether it's with my daughter, or even like a friend of mine had her adult birthday party at like an arcade fun center thing, like had a full-on kids birthday party with pizza and cake and video games with a bunch of it. I did bring my daughter, but it was primarily adults there, and I was like, we should totally normalize this. And but I would find that after an experience like that, or like going to Universal Studios a couple of weekends ago, we went to a water slide party this past weekend, and after an experience like that, where I'm just fully like playing and not concerning myself with all the deeper troubles of the world, it's like when I come back to making adult decisions, it's like it's just such a lighter, easier place to be an adult from.
I love that, Emily. A friend of mine had a quinceañera for her 40th birthday party.
Oh, that's awesome!
And I walked in, and she was like in this ball gown, and it was amazing. It was so inspiring.
Yes.
We do need to normalize that.
We do. There was like, there's no reason not to do this all the time.
Yeah, I love that so much.
To your point, Emily, it brings, as business owners and entrepreneurs and people who are, purpose driven to impact the world through the work that we do, I feel like that level of lightedness and decision making, like, it just makes us that much more powerful when it comes to those things that we are purpose driven to do. I feel like it just gives us such a such a different, not out of the box, but such a different outlook on how others might make decisions versus how we're making choices.
Honestly, I find it to be, and I'm not saying don't meditate or do your spiritual and recovery practices, but honestly, I find that like the benefits I get from spending a little bit of time just devoted to play are very similar, if not the same, as levitating on a mountain for. I've never done that, but you know what I mean? Like meditation or other spiritual practices.
I'll share this. I just was listening to this podcast this morning, which I shared with Carlos, where it's a World Cup winning rugby player is being interviewed. And he and his wife went to go see a yogi. And the yogi said, well, I sleep 2.5 hours a night. And his wife, who is a doctor or a nurse or something, she said, but how do you recover? And he said, recover from what?
Mm.
He lives his life every moment of every day in this place that doesn't require him to recover from it, which was such a paradigm shift for me in realizing I like get through my day looking forward to my time to rest and recover.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and even like to that point, like when I took my daughter to Universal Studios a couple of weekends ago, and we got 20,000 plus steps a day, and it was hot and, physically kind of brutal, but same. I didn't really feel like I felt like that was recovery.
Yeah.
Ram Dass talks about this idea in a lot of his older teachings about the simple constructs, right, that we create in our mind about rest, about sleep, about work, about so many different things. And that brings me back to this idea of like, where do we establish ourselves in curiosity about the stories that we tell ourselves, or that we've been sold on, or that we have believed all of our lives but have never really questioned. And I think that that's one of the things that children do well, right? Is like not stick to the model and be curious about the why. And I know that has, been a stress reliever in one way, has allowed me to live in a lot more peace and more in the moment when I sort of adopted this idea of like, what if I didn't believe that to be true? Right? What if I didn't believe that I needed 8 hours of sleep every night? What if I didn't believe that after 6 clients back to back, I needed to be tired? What if just go on and on, right? And I would sort of challenge anyone out there to try this and see if something really significant doesn't shift in your life when you do that.
And Byron's Katie's work is a great tool for that. I think it's 3 questions to ask any thought that comes in. That practice, mind-blowing.
Oh, thank you so much. I love that. That's, I think that's what I need to hear. Exactly what I need to hear moving forward today and going on forward, to ask those questions. Thank you so much.
We always get such good nuggets from these talks. I hope
we do.
I hope that translates as nicely to the audience. I'm sure
the exact right people at the exact right time, exactly what we need to hear. Oh gosh, just I want to ask one more thing. So these forges of fire, these moments where we feel like we're presented and we're inside of this fire, when they're coming from a place of opportunity, but we don't see it as that. We see it as like a great obstacle or a challenge whatever that may look like. I'll just point it towards the entrepreneur life, since that seems to be most of our base that tunes in and listens. When we're presented with that, based on what we've been discussing today, that's the opportunity to ask these questions and to see this fire with reverence rather than with fear.
Yeah, I also think it's important, Lisa, that we often get caught up in, like, is this the right way? Is this the wrong way? Is this how I should do it? And one of the questions I often ask myself, like, what if there is no right or wrong way? What if the fire in front of me or the challenge in front of me is simply for me, so that I can develop some deeper wisdom, some better understanding of myself, so that I can live life more easily, right? I don't need to sit and label it or right. It doesn't need to be right or wrong. It could just be, right? It can just be a fire that's in front of me for me to learn something that I need on my own path. And I could leave it there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that. I think detachment from labels is another great practice to have. But I think also, like, depending on what your philosophy or spirituality is, I have, and I think Carlos and I share this belief that what the universe brings to us is for our benefit. And so when we can pause and take a step back and look at it from all sides and find our way through to grow our souls, that is the essence of the human experience and why we are here at this time in this place to do this work.
Okay,
Amen.
that was so beautiful. So that, my friends, is a little bit of what you can hear discussed in the podcast, The Human Experience. Beautiful, my friends. What do you say we continue this conversation inside of our closed and private Facebook group? I opened up the discussion this morning. I'm going to poke around in there and stir it up a little bit more, because I feel that this will really resonate with everyone and where they are. And inside the group, you can find Supna and Carlos. If you have any questions, and linked in the description, you can find more information as well there. And certainly, I encourage you to listen to their podcast with that childlike innocence, wonder, and joy, and see what it brings for you. Thank you so much for being here and for joining us. And I just can't wait to hear what comes from the both of you next. Emily and I are cheering you on, seeing you in your spaces, being rock stars, the events and the opportunities. They're surely there for you. Thank you so much. Anything else you would like to leave for our listeners today?
No, I'd just like to say thank you for having us. It's always such a pleasure to be on. And again, such a big fan of the work that you and Emily are doing. And so keep being rock stars, keep showing up. These conversations are needed. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, guys. Well, that being said, we'll talk to you in 5.
Talk to you in 5. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thank y'all so much for listening to our podcast. If you haven't yet, please be sure to subscribe, rate, review, and share with all your friends so they can join our circle of collaboration on this journey. You can find us on Instagram at Conscious Collaboration Podcast, on Spotify, iTunes, and Audible, to name a few. Please join us next time for another deep dive into how you can live life in more alignment. Mind, body, and business. Send us your questions and comments in our DMs or email us at consciouscollaborationpodcast@gmail.com. See you in 5 minutes.